Hola, ¿cómo están? It's Lucy here again, and we're going to talk about lecture number 10. And this lecture is really important because it's a little bit confusing when we start talking about irregular verbs. So before we start talking about irregular verbs, let me talk to you about and review the endings for regular verbs that end in AR. Remember that, for example, we got a verb like hablar, we got cantar, estudiar, trabajar. So what you do is that you take the stem, you take the AR, and then you attach the ending. O, as, a, amos, an. Yo trabajo, tú trabajas, usted, él, ella trabaja, nosotros, nosotras trabajamos, ustedes, ellos, ellas trabajan. Okay. Also, I wanted to mention that remember the difference between regular and irregular verbs is that they follow a different pattern. Not at the ending of the verb, but they're going to have some what we call stand changing. Okay. It's like in English, we got some verbs that are regular, like to work. We just add ed and made the verb past tense. But we got many other verbs that we have to learn, unless, when you are no native speaker like myself, you have to learn as they come one by one. Like I eat, I ate, right? I have eaten. So all of this is the same in Espanol. We need to learn the difference between regulars and irregulars and know then how to work and make it in a very spontaneous way. So the only way to do that is by practicing. Let's go to the next slide. And we're talking about verbs that ending in ER. We already talked about those verbs like comer, beber, leer. Beber means to drink, comer means to eat, and leer means to read. Also, I remind you, you got a list of all those verbs for you to study. So what are you going to do? Example, comer, you take the ER and get the stem, that is C-O-M, come, and then you say como, comes, come, comemos, comen. Yo como, tú comes, usted, él, ella come, nosotros, nosotras comemos, ustedes, ellos, ellas comen. Then we go to the IR ending. We saw verbs like escribir, that means to write, vivir, that means to live, L-I-V-E, to live in a place. So what we do is we take the stem again, and I'm going to say, yo escribo, tú escribes, escribe, escribimos, escriben. That's why in Espanol it's very important that you understand the concept, because once that you do, it's very similar. Notice that ER and IR verbs are very similar. The only thing that you have to really watch out for is the nosotros and nosotras, because comer es comemos. And then escribir es escribimos. So make sure that you pay attention to the nosotros and nosotras form, because the rest is the same. Muy bien, in the next slide, we're going to see how these verbs work. Stem changing verbs give their stems the boot form. You see, right there, you got a boot right here, because that's kind of like how they're gonna follow the pattern. So let's check them out. Remember, E can change to IE only within the boot. This means the nosotros form never changes. We see that on the verse when we were talking about tener. Remember we say tenemos and venir. Remember we say venimos. So the nosotros form are the only form that really doesn't change. Okay, let's go and let's see querer. Querer is an irregular verb. You're going to see later on that this E is going to change to IE. I put it here just like a regular verb for you to kind of see how different will be is we decide that we're not going to treat it as an irregular verb. I will take the stem, like comer, and I will leave the ER out, and I will put the N. O, S, E, hemos, and N. But really, you don't say quiero, quieres, quiere. That is wrong, because we are treating that verb like it was a regular, and it's an irregular verb. So this will be totally a no-no. So let's gonna see the right way to do it. Here you got querer. Querer is to want, to wish. So here we go. You see how you change that E for UE. Yo quiero. Tú quieres. Usted, él, ella quiere. Nosotros queremos. Notice that we don't move it. We leave it the same. Queréis, we leave it the same. And quieren. Ustedes, ellos, and ellas. And here is when you got that shape that we're talking about. The boot shape. Right? So please make sure that all of those conjugations are going to be the one who change it inside the boot. So we got another verb, entender, right? Remember, querer, you change that E for IE. Quiero. Entender is going to follow the same pattern. So entender means to understand. So you're going to change that E for IE. So entiendo, entiendes, entiende, entendemos. Notice that I didn't make any change because we already know that that's the only form that we're going to leave it alone. And entienden. Again, notice the form. All the ones inside the boot are the ones who are going to remain with the changes. But again, notice that como, comes, come, comemos, comen. The endings is exactly the same. It's just the stem. Okay, we go now and let's gonna add another verse who are going to have other patterns. We got the E and the stem can change to like E, perder, querer is to want, and then perder is to lose. Notice that you're gonna say then what? Pierdo, pierdes, pierde, perdemos, pierden. If there are two E's in the stem, the second one always change. Preferir, to prefer, and empezar. So, if I want to conjugate this, I will change that E for IE. Prefiero, prefieres. Empiezo, that is to begin. Empiezo, empiezas. Okay, so the other verse that we got from E as IE, remember we got one example that is going to be querer. We already know that querer is the one that we got in mind. So, pensar is going to be conjugated as querer. Empezar, comenzar. Comenzar and empezar are very similar verbs in the meaning. What is to begin, one is to start. And really we don't make so much difference when we use one over the other. Entender is to understand. Preferir is to prefer. And cerrar is to close. Yo cierro la puerta. So notice how I change the E to IE. Muy bien. And then now let's gonna see another set of verbs. Notice that I put them like in clusters, so it's easier for you to see what are the verbs that end in, that you change the E for IE. Comenzar, empezar, all of them. And then now we're gonna talk about a new set of verbs that are also irregular. And these are the ones you're gonna change the U for UE or the O for UE. Here we got some of those examples. We got poder, right? This O is going to change to UE. We got jugar, that is to play, and this U is going to change to UE. Dormir, that is to sleep, and this is going to change this O for UE. Almorzar, you're going to change that O for UE. Now, almorzar. Okay. Almorzar, I just noticed a mistake here in this PowerPoint. Almorzar is to have lunch. Almorzar is to have lunch. So please forget about these two dreams. Almorzar is to have lunch. Volver is to return. Volver is to return, and you change that O for UE. I apologize for that. Muy bien. Let's go into the O to U. And we got poder, again, jugar. Jugar is to play, dormir is to sleep, almorzar is to have lunch, and volver is to return. And poder is to be able to. And here we got. We're going to remind you again, what are the endings for the AR verb? Right? The O, the as, the a, the amos, and an. And for poder, ER versus O, S, A, hemos, en. And the IR, right? O, as, a, amos, an. Now we got jugar. Jugar, what do we say jugar? Jugar is an irregular verb. Jugar means to play. Notice that when we talk about tocar, in one of the first video lectures, tocar means to play an instrument or to touch. But jugar means to play also, but it's to play a game, a video game, or to play an sport. Yo juego béisbol. So notice that the U here is going to change for UE. Juego, juegas, juega, jugamos, and juega. Again, I emphasize that we don't change the we form. Just leave it the same way as a regular verb. Muy bien, we got poder. Poder, we change the O for UE. Puedo, puedes, puede, podemos, and pueden. Again, basically what you need to do is take all those verbs that end in, for example, the verbs that you change the like querer, the E for IE, put of them all together and make sure that you know what do they mean, those verbs, and how to work with them. Take now the other verbs that end in O or U and that you change it for UE, put it then together in a flashcards, in your notebook, and make sure that you know that those verbs are changing for the UE form. Now we got volver. We change the O for UE. Vuelvo, vuelves, vuelve, volvemos, volvéis, and vuelve. For many people that is taking Spanish as a second language, many times they go and will ask you a question such as, volver, is that a regular or irregular verb? And people just will say, yeah, it's an irregular verb, and you change the O for UE. And they will go, oh, okay, I got it. Because they know what to do from there. So we want you to be really understanding of the lingo when we're talking a language. Okay, pedir. Pedir is a verb that you end the E for I. Pedir. Pido, pides, pide, pedimos, pedís, and piden. Los estudiantes piden comida. Comida is food. Los estudiantes, yo pido comida. Yo pido un libro. The more vocabulary and the more verbs you got, the more you will be able to speak the language and to talk the language and to write the language and to understand when somebody else is talking to you. So make sure, I know it's hard because I know to try to memorize all of these verbs are sometimes overwhelming. But that's why I recommend to do it every day. Just choose a few verbs and make sure you are familiar with them. Write sentence, listening and Quizless, so you make sure that you really understand all of them. And then immediately when you say that word, you recognize them because you have practiced enough that your brain recognizes that word. Okay, and that's what we call the switching, the code switching. You say a word in English, you recognize it, but you say it in Spanish, you also recognize it because now you know what do they mean. In these slides, you will see that you got another irregular verbs. And these one are irregular because the first person changed. Notice, salgo, pongo, doy, hago, and traigo. If just one person decide to change their conjugation, this verb is considered irregular. So notice, for example, salir. Salir is to go out or to leave. I leave the room, right? So salir, to go out. So I say salgo, sales, sale, salimos, salís, and sales. Notice that it's exactly like escribir. Escribes, escribe, escribimos, escribís, escribe. We got poner, the NNER, just like comer. Comes, come, comemos, coméis, and comen. But notice the first person is pongo. Doy is to give. So yo doy. Das, da, damos, dais, and dan. Muy bien. Hacer. Hacer is to do or to make. The first person is hago, haces, hace, hacemos, hacéis, and hacen. And traer, traer is to bring. Yo traigo pizza a la fiesta. Es to bring. So traigo, traes, trae, traemos, traéis, traen. So again, salir is to go out. Poner is to put. Yo pongo el libro en la mesa. That is to give. Hacer is to make or to do. Yo hago la tarea. Tarea is homework. I do the homework. And traer is to bring. Now, here we go again, and I'm trying to put and remind you these words that we talked before in the last video lecture, but I wanted to bring them up now to remind you, like venir. You see, venir es vengo and tener es tengo. But remember now that they have more than one change in the rest of the verbs. You change the E for IE. Not like the other ones we just studied. That is only in the first person. So we got venir, that is to come, and tener, that is to have. And oír, that is to listen or to hear. Because when we're talking about to listen, we probably translate it to escuchar. Oír is to hear. What happens is sometimes in Espanol, we don't make so much distinction when we're using to hear or to listen as much as we do it in English. Okay? So yo oigo la música. Yo tengo un libro. Yo vengo a la universidad. Remember, venir is to come. So I will say now, hasta pronto. I will say it again that this lecture is a little bit hard because you have to really practice in order to see that you understand. When you listen, you get a sense of what is going to be and what are the verbs that are regular and irregular. But really, when you start practicing and writing sentences is when you really be aware of all these changes. Like querer. Yo quiero pizza. I change the E for IE. Yo quiero. Poder. Poder is to be able to. Yo puedo bailar. And it's important to know also that once that you use one of these verbs that you conjugate, the next verb is going to be an infinitive, meaning you don't have to conjugate it. Like, for example, I just say, yo puedo bailar. I can dance. Okay, make sure that also you remember all the go-go verbs, like vengo, tengo, and traigo, all the other ones who are in that slide. And also remember tener and venir. Please take notes of these slides. Please make sure that you know the meaning of these verbs. And please make sure that you can write sentences and recognize all of them. Thank you so much for listening. You are the best. Thank you so much.